Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the library. Geshe Lakdala is out of town, so I'll do the introduction here. Today's conference is titled Archaeology of Early Tibetan Plateau and Consecrated Art in Mountains. We have two distinguished speakers here in Dharamsala. It's nice to see all the audience here and a lot of familiar faces here. I want to thank library for co-hosting this conference. We did the same conference last year, so this is our second annual library and student Nyandak co-hosted conference. The funding for this conference was generously provided by the Rubin Museum of Himalayan Art in New York. So we want to thank Rubin Museum. We have some collaborators here who are not going to present today. John, Harrison, Ingun, and Paul Laroque. They were here last year. So yeah, thank you for the continued collaboration. Professor Rob Lindroth is a professor emeritus and the former chair of Department of Art History at Northwestern University in the US. Professor Rob received his PhD in art history from the University of Chicago. Previously served as a curator of Himalayan art at the Rubin Museum of Himalayan Art in New York City. Professor's professional interests lies, among many others, history and development of Himalayan Buddhist art and material culture, Eastern Indian sculpture from 8th to 13th century, esoteric Buddhism and art in East, South, and Southeast Asia. Professor Rob has conducted field work and written numerous books on, among all these other topics, among them Zanskar, art history of Zanskar. Professor Rob has conducted field trips in Zanskar for past 30-something years, has been to Zanskar 25 to 30 times, and has also done in the late 90s and early 2000s field work in Amdo in Tibet also. Professor Rob has authored and edited numerous books, including Early Matters, essays on history of Buddhist art in Zanskar, Western Himalaya, Seeing into Stone, Pre-Buddhist Petroglyphs and Zanskar's Early Inhabitants, Visible Heritage, essays on art and architecture of Greater Ladakh, Collecting Paradise, which is actually related to today's topic, Buddhist art of Kashmir and its legacies, and Ruthless Compassion, Wrathful Deities in Indo-Tibetan Esoteric Buddhist Art. I first met Professor Rob 2 years ago in New York City. Professor Rob was invited at the Metropolitan Museum to give a distinguished lecture on the Himalayan art by the Rubin Museum. Professor Rob gave a wonderful talk about the mandala. And since then, Professor Rob has been very kind to offer our studio help with our ongoing project in Zanskar. We've been doing this field trip, like as I mentioned earlier, 3 times with the collaborators and 5 times with our office. Every time I leave New York for this field trip, I have to pack my luggage, and then without Professor Rob, I have to pack an extra luggage full of all the books about Zanskar history, material culture, and art history of Zanskar. But thanks to Professor Rob, I don't have to pack a second suitcase full of books because I can ask Professor Rob, and Professor Rob is like an encyclopedia on Zanskar, so we are very grateful for. Today's talk is Reparative Fieldwork in Western Himalaya, Consecrated Art in Mountain Hamlets. Professor Rob will talk about, for past 10, 20 years, Professor Rob has been doing, as his own personal project, reparative fieldwork in Zanskar. To tell you very briefly about the background, art history of like Himalayan and Tibetan art has long history, and there are a lot of scholars who has been to Tibet, Ngari, Tibet, and Ladakh, and Zanskar, and thanks to them we know a lot about the Tanka and the art, but also at the same time, a lot of the art historians, they also happen to take a lot of the artworks, and they are now you see them in museums in Europe and US. Most of them are lying in underground storage instead of them being in the monasteries in Ladakh and Zanskar and Ngari. But Professor Rob has been doing the opposite, going to the remote mountain hamlets in Zanskar and working with the locals to try to repair the tanka and remount. And so today we'll hear about that. Professor Rob has done this kind of reparative work on around 80 tankas in Zanskar that ranged from 15th to late 19th century. So with that, welcome, Professor Rob.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction and for being here. It's a real pleasure, and wow, to follow Mark's amazing talk. It's mind-blowing. It's really a wonderful talk. This is something much more about later contemporary material. But I hope it's of some interest to you. I called it, as Tenzin said, reparative field work. As an art historian, I do field work. And obviously, in one level, we're trying to repair not the paintings, but to the mounting, the silk cloth mounting of the tankas. But at another sense, as Tenzin indicated, I was working on research for Collecting Paradise, an exhibition that was at the Rubin Museum and was at Northwestern. And I wanted to include a lot of works that were from Zanskar and other Western Himalayan places that had direct impact from Kashmir, especially early Kashmir. And in doing so, I found two particular collectors of the Western Himalayas in the 1930s who had a big impact. And I found out that this man, Walter Kells, who was an ornithologist, bird guy, he was also an obsessive collector, and he collected all kinds of things, including, whenever he could, tankas. He wasn't interested in Buddhism. He wasn't interested in tankas. He didn't know anything about it, but he received money from the University of Michigan at Ann Arbor, and was funded to buy whatever he wanted. And he kept a lot of the best stuff for himself, and later sold them and did other things. And then here he is in his pretentious way. He had a PhD in zoology, and in Ann Arbor, still today, he went around with Rupchand, a Lahori guy, and shot hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of birds, and supplied Natural History Museum in New York, and of course the Anthropology and the History Museum in Zoology Museum in Michigan. All kinds of birds, and literally thousands. Rupchand, who was his assistant, was harassed by his relatives, saying, "How can you do this? How can you?" Because they would shoot birds all day and then stuff them all night. And later it was published, his diary. But I spent a lot of time reading through his diary and recognizing his trips through Zanskar and Ladakh. And it turned out that he met one of Ngari Rinpoche's. The previous one has just passed away, but the one in the 30s came to Zanskar and collecting money to go back to central Tibet. And Kells got to be kind of friendly with the guy while he was tenting in similar places in Zanskar, and said, "Hey, I'll give you a significant contribution, but what could you either give me a letter or one of your appendices to come with me to Karsha Monastery and give me some tankas, because I just wanted some tankas. So I'll give you some money, and you tell one of your monasteries to give me tankas." And so he did. And included some from Lakir, a number of, we know which ones from Lakir. He didn't have any idea of what these were about, and so he just took some. For instance, there was a trio of long life deities, Amitayas, White Tara, and Ushnisha Vijaya. And he chose the White Tara and the Amitayas and left the Ushnisha Vijaya. And I've contacted the Lakir people, and they said, "Yeah, we still have them. We can't really use it because it's just a fragment of a piece." And the other two pieces are in the museum in Michigan. So this kind of doesn't fit so well for me in Lakir. It didn't seem right because they're just sitting in storage. In the Anthropology Museum in Michigan. I've tried to convince them to, I used some of them in the exhibition at Collecting Paradise and talked about these issues for them. I showed two of the White Tara and the Amitayas, and then just showed an empty sign for the third tanka. But he went to Karsha too in Zanskar, and went with one of the attendants of Ngari Rinpoche and got a very interesting early Drigong painting from him, and also got this Karsha, this Vajrabhairava Dorje Jigje painting from Karsha. So we know it comes from that. So it seemed like kind of sad to follow the same kind of field work that somebody like Kells, who offered some of the best things for sale at Christie's, and I tracked down a couple of the paintings that had been in private collectors and included them in Collecting Paradise, and included the Rubin sort of took away the nasty stuff and just talked, "Oh, this is such a great painting," rather than talking about the provenance. But in the Northwestern, we were able to do it. And then the other collector is our famous person, Giuseppe Tucci, who had a number of these expeditions funded by the Italian government at a time when Western Himalaya was pretty. There was a lot of poverty in Ngari, and he took full advantage of that, and made notes of the people. There was a yak epidemic at the time. People were losing their yaks, and took advantage of fascist money. These are images of Tucci in fascist uniform making appointments or talks with Japanese diplomats and Mussolini himself. We see him here with a Nazi uniform. His expeditions were funded by the fascist government, and then he kept a lot of the Tibetan painted scrolls is a kind of catalog of Tibetan art that it was based on his personal collection. Some of it was later given to the Italian government. Some of it was also sold by many museums in the United States. And after the exhibition, I found some very interesting declassified information about Tucci from the British officials on, for instance, his 1933 expedition in Western Tibet, in which he reported that the parts of the ways that he got people to give him money or to give him tankas when he gave them money was to say, oh, don't worry, I'm sending it to my temple in my house in Italy. I'm Buddhist himself. And he admitted in his reports, he didn't admit, he was proud to say to the British that the fact I can speak Tibetan helped me very much together with my alleged Buddhist faith. This was, of course, a lie, but it was a very useful lie, so it opened me many doors. He admitted to this. He also was, Hugh Richardson was one of the officials who said, you know, Tucci is apt to be carried away by his enthusiasm into acquiring Tibetan sacred objects by dubious methods. But this can be checked. I mean, he just did it in the West Tibet, but we can do it in Shigatse and Sakya. So the British knew at the time that he was doing these kinds of things. Managed to extract 3,000 ancient Tibetan manuscripts. Not bad. And also many, all kinds of things. The kinds of things that Mark showed of those libraries were not just the results of Cultural Revolution, no doubt, but also he extracted from stupas, from Chortens. These came from above Toling, which we just saw, and now they're in LACMA and Chicago and places like that. I went up to the stupa above Toling in 2005 and 2007 and found similar objects still. This one was still there along with Tsatsa, and then comparing it to one of the things that he extracted. It's clearly from similar periods of time. Did a lot, acquired a lot of things. Also took Tsatsa, which kind of sounds a little sad when you think about it for Westerners. It's like, personal ashes from people, and they're deposited in stupas. And then to just, he did it in the name of science, of course. But is it okay to dig up funeral coffins and looking at the metalwork and, oh, it's so beautiful, I'm taking it for somebody? It just seems kind of right. So I've taken these, but I didn't take any of the Tsatsa. He also extracted murals from when he could, and left many of the libraries that are left. They're a wreck, but you won't find any painted sheets anymore. The dealers have gone through that, and so they just left the sheets, but not any images from them. And he also, and this will be the last thing that I did. These are two objects that are similar to an object that he found at Kigompa in Spiti of a Buddha that he thought was from the same period of Rinchen Zangpo, when he just published his book, and he wanted it. And the local people said, no, I'm sorry, this is our inheritance from our ancestors, and they validate our fields, make them fertile. So we can't give it away. He was pissed off, went home, or went back to the tent, and then came back the next morning and said, I had a dream, and it wasn't like Martin Luther's dream. The Buddha gave me this wooden sculpture, and they were like, oh, God, what do we do? And he said, we'll get the shaman to decide for me. And so the shaman came in, and he gave Tucci on his head the sculpture. And it's not really known. In his own reports, he said that later he gave the shaman a lot of money. But in this report at the time, a newspaper report, he had told them that he gave the money. At this moment, the wizard had accepted a gift of rupees, opportunely fell into a trance, and in this condition, traced the statue upon Tucci. I mean, that's bad stuff. And there's plenty. He always said, "Oh, there's nobody in Ngari, there's nobody in Spiti who is worth, these texts. They don't know anything about them." But there's plenty of people like Lochen Tulku and Chentun Rinpoche at Ankar who do carry about the text there. So some of these, by the way, Tucci never took any photographs, but the people who worked for him, who were forced to do, even if they lived in tents, they were forced to refer to Tucci as His Excellency, not Giuseppe or Joey or anything like that. But anyway, they also acquired objects in the process and sold. This one was estimated to $400,000 to $600,000, So this sort of seemed to me like a good reason not to do this kind of field work. Now I'm going to ask Chen to pick up wherever that's where it is, and window presentation, thank you. I'm going to start to what I'm trying to do as reparative, literally for remounting, but also in a way I feel like trying to do what I can. And the first one I did in 2018, people, when I'm in Zanskar, they say, why don't you give us a donation for the shrine, for the Lakang? And I say, sure, okay. Well, now when I do it, I say, okay, you repair the roof so there's no more rain coming in, and I will hire a trained Tanka tailor, Lama Stamba, who's been trained, you'll see photographs of him, to remount. Right? He's a specialist. I get nice cloth that I like, that's just plain blue, like the old kind of style of remounting, and I pay for people to go there. So the first one was in Relagong, which is a 5,880 or about 17,000 foot pass that we went for 2 days in order to get. The first time I went, I heard from Karshalumpo, a good friend of mine locally, that Relagong had some good paintings. So I went over, I thought, June, yeah, okay, this is what it was like in June. The local, the villagers were coming back towards Pei in order to clear the strait for the first time since November. They made the trail. But they were great, they were really nice, and they were very kind once we got there. And then I went again next year, and it's a beautiful, beautiful site. And that's the hamlet where the shrine is. It's a personal shrine that turned out to have some very interesting paintings with inscriptions on it, including some ones who were well known from the 18th century in Zanskar. Jedpat Dorje, who's a former abbot of Dzongkul Monastery and the son of a locally well-known Siddha named Nawang Tsering. So we found a number of the paintings by this 18th century painter that had been in the 18th century. They had made a donation to Dzongkul, and then the abbot had in the sort of a commemoration of their family members, and then these were all inscribed in inscriptions, along with Dharanese, of course. But there were a number of inscriptions dated. So this process of reparative field work is a great benefit to me, as well as the people who get the paintings. I mean, they're very grateful, and I'm very grateful, because normally paintings are consecrated. And so, somebody like me, I'm not a Buddhist, can, just, oh, can I come up here and take it away and photograph it and look at the back? And, no. But once it's been archoked, once it's been deconsecrated, then it's fine. And we take it apart and then make new full mountings. In order to get there, we had to take horses with wood in order to carry the supplies, wood for the rolling bars and the bats, and along the way it's just beautiful, incredible poppies, blue poppies on the way, and fabulous mountains and my tent. And yeah, there were a couple of yaks who were coming on the way who were helping us carry some of the supplies for us, as well as a few monks who help with the consecration and the deconsecration. It's just nice to be trekking. And there's Geleng Wangchuk, the second son of my kind of mentor, Karsha Lumpo, who passed away a couple of years ago now. And here was our yesterday, for the first time I went to the studio Nyandak, which is such a beautiful studio. This blue tent was our studio, but in a barley field, and here is our inside of our studio with our meals and our you can see the singer or the sewing machine. The sewing machine, of course, there was no electricity, a little bit of solar, but we had to take a hand crank sewing machines strapped to the horses in order to get over there, and Geleng Wangchuk helping us with the screening the inscriptions, writing them down. And my friend Lobsang Gyatso, who's from Pishu in Zanskar, who is my longtime guide, friend, cook, everything for trekking. He has now become the assistant to Lama Stamba, and I have become the assistant of the assistant. So. And so I do a lot of the little work, like sometimes planing, but mostly I heat up the irons. Again, there's no electricity, so we have to put these on a kerosene stove, and I do that job very well. And then I've also learned how to a traditional way of cleaning tankas that is relatively innocuous in terms of it doesn't take out any of the pigments, but they take, what's that thing again you were talking about, Mark, about barley? Oh yeah, tsampa, and mar, and hot water, and making like the snakes, and then rolling them on the tanka, and it takes the dirt off unbelievably. It freshens it without taking any of the pigments off. So I've become kind of a minor specialty with that. It doesn't work very well at Northwestern, but anyway, the Lama Stamba is a meticulous tailor who makes all of these reframing, and then we tie them in, and also sew them in as well. And we don't do anything else to the tanka itself except for the tsampa cleaning. And if there are holes in the back, or if there are holes across the cloth, then we do on the back try and keep those from getting worse. But other than that, we don't do any in-painting or anything like that. And whenever possible, we keep the original mounting, because it's often very fine Chinese silk mounting. Some of it Ming Dynasty, and Lobsang Gyatso now has become a bit of a connoisseur about. He told me the other day. He said, "Oh, this is Ming painting now." So, and indeed, this happened to be an example that we kept alive the older stuff. And we also, and here's Gelong Stamba and Lobsang Gyatso at Relakong. He also does these ears at the edges with leather in order to keep the groups of cloth together on it. And here's the inside the shrine with a supposedly fixed talu kind of ceiling, and these three silver paintings of Shedpa Dorje, which are really quite important. And then saying goodbye. I went again this year just for I was trekking at another place and went over the pass and stayed there. And they said, please come back next year and do some more. We had a week there and we couldn't do more than we could do. But there were more that they wanted us to come back to. And so, it's just beautiful place. Opportunities to study this and to be in an amazing landscape. And then back in Pei, looking for the up above, down to the place where there is a highway. So then a couple of years later, there's a village shrine above Nangwapal, which has some really interesting 15th and 16th century tankas, and they asked us to work on that. So there's my little, this doesn't work. So there's my little orange tent below the shrine, which has been renovated. And inside the shrine, there's a 9th century Kashmiri brass sculpture that had been found right clearly where they were looking for pottery or for clay, and they found this amazing Sundarshana Avalokiteshvara shrine. I think I have it in the consecration there. A lot of tsongkapas, of course, before and after. You notice the older mode is just to have a trapezoidal blue type at the top and blue at the bottom. But I have kind of insisted that we don't use the very dense, complicated Varanasi silk, but a plain silk, and it's mostly hand-woven blue silk that I get from Delhi. But then we use the yellow and the red guard stripes, and then just regular gauzy red dust covers. So obviously on the right is the new stuff, and I do keep the old ones in the sites. I number them, so you'll see some images of that. So those Lobsang Gyatso there again, and Lama Stamba. This time we brought 2 sewing machines, And you can see the work on both of us, or both of them working on these. So once again, and this is a 15th century Amitais with a lot of inscriptions on the back, and we do usually cover the back, but as you'll see in a couple of examples, we cut out in a way so that you can see the inscriptions on the back. A lot of times they just cut it. If they redo it, you can't see the inscriptions anymore. Most people assume that it's been consecrated, so it doesn't really matter. In this case, we brought some of the ritual masters from Karsha Monastery to Nangwapal, because it's just a few hours walk, to prepare for the consecration. And the ritual masters came and did this. They use a mirror both on the Melong, both on the deconsecration and then the reconsecration. So they sort of cover the mirror after it's been deconsecrated and just leave it until we're finished, and then they uncover it, and then I don't have to tell most of you, but they request that the numen of the deity temporarily remain in the mirror, and then once it's finished, then they request that it return to the tanka, and they show each one of it. And I have learned so much by being part of this process than I ever did just as an art historian going to the museum or something like that. It's a living process, and I have so much respect for the way that it's handled seriously. And then, of course, donations to the crows outside for the. It's the whole process. Then I was the same summer. Shade is another one of those sites that it takes a couple of days walking, unless you're Zangskari, in which it takes a long afternoon. But for me, it was a day and a half to get there. And he's an Amchi Nuldan, and he is one of his ancestors was a abbot in Tibet, and there was something going on that happened, and he left with a lot of stuff with him, and I don't know, but apparently his ancestor was forced by the Ladakhi king to come to Leh to report, because there were some reports by the Tibetan officials, and he was exonerated, and he was returned with all this material. So this is us getting there in order to, again, Lama Stamba, Lobsang Gyatso, and me, and here's the horse with the sewing machine packed to it, and we spent another week to do as many of these paintings to fix. He has unbelievable library there. I mean, hand printed. I mean, handwritten, not just printed once. And this is just about a quarter of his whole library in the shrine. And I was hoping that somebody, some text person, could come sometime and give an assessment of that. So we did a full artuk with the former. This is the former abbot Khenpo of Pukdal Monastery, and he came with us, walking to us, to do the deconsecration for us, and very elaborate. And Lama Stamba, he won't touch the paintings until they've been reconsecrated. It's just, sorry, will sit until they're done. So it has to be done, it's a serious kind of thing. And he did a very, I was the only, well, whatever. I followed his, and once again, asking for them to come. And we couldn't do all of the paintings. There were so many, but we did as many as we could. And there were some quite interesting ones. There's always a combination in these monasteries and individual shrines of things that have been former ancestors who were monks who went to either Shigatse or Lhasa and then came back after with some of the paintings from central Tibet and paintings that are clearly based in Ladakh or Zanskar or Lahore. It's really an education on a lot of levels for me. It's a great opportunity and there are some things that I think might have also either been from Jedpa Dorje again, because they're sort of a special mode, or they're from some of his disciples. And so here's just some examples of the before and the after. And like I said, the people appreciate they look a little new again once they're done. So, and I find I have the idea that maybe the small figure in the lower left of this painting is actually doing a consecration of the painting ahead of, and he's with the big drum, just like the drum in the very shrine in which it hits. So he also brought back a number of pretty interesting images from Tibet, and so this is his. So then also we did it in Karsha Chuchigja, in the shrine itself. There's a little shrine up above. I don't know if we took you up there, but and this is now the head ritual lama at Karsha Monastery, and he did the Karchok deconsecration for that. Same, I took the text and the mirror, and then he really formally wrapped it up, and literally we hung it in the shrine, and then we go to work and this is the meticulous work that Lama Stama does, combining each one of these white cords has to be sewn into the side of these guard shrines. So we do a lot of work on that, and if possible, we just change the rolling slats, or rolling bars, or the hanging slats, and leave the cloth. But in many cases, the cloth is just too bad. But we will, like in this case, you see at the bottom of the finished one, there's what we call a door for the tanka at the bottom, and that's actually from I was able to extract a decent piece of the original mounting, and then clean it and iron it, and then we used it as so that there's some memory of what we used. This is the Ming Dynasty piece. So, and then, as I said, I label each one of the remains in case some obscure art historian like myself, someday comes in and what's all this? And that's all. And then we had the Karsha monasteries come in and do the whole Rabne process with the mirror still in the wrapped up and also then unwrapped up and used there. So, and I had done one time. I was in. I sometimes I get the Sotheby's or Christie's catalogs, and they had a little metalwork image that they didn't know what they were talking about, and I knew that it was a Kashmiri Vajrasattva, not a Vajradharma, and I told them, and they fixed it on the internet version, but it was too late on the sculpture, and then it didn't sell. So I said, I'll give you something for it, and I brought it and I gave it to the shrine at the Chuchikjal. So now it was being reconsecrated finally after how many years? So I mean that's another kind of, I feel like something like this, instead of me putting it on my mantle or something, it's more meaningful in a place, a shrine like this. And so trying to redirect the movement. And then once we'd done 4 of those, then Bardhan Monastery said, hey, yeah, we got some of those. And so last summer, we went to, here's the head, Namgyal, at the old, once again, they think it's Bhutanese, and I think it's Jedpa Dorje, who spent 6 years in Bhutan, walked to Bhutan in the 18th century, spent 6 years studying in art, and then came back and became the abbot of Dzongkhul. Anyway, Dzongkhul is another Drukpa monastery, as is Bardhan. So, you know, I think that these things have to do with Jedpa Dorje, but whatever, they think of it as Bhutan. But their shrines, or their cloth mountings were in tatters, so that's what we did. You know, but some of them were like this one. This is an old Mughal embroidery. I mean, this is good stuff. So we just sort of cleaned it up and added a door from and created the hanging slats and the rolling bar and the dust covers. But we kept the existing silk because it was in great shape. It was really nice. But whenever we could, sometimes we would add pieces from the... So we worked in the monastery for a week. And at the end, this is the 3 of us again, good stuff, and tried to do whatever we could with material. And here again is what I mentioned earlier. There's a way to, you know, turn up the back so that we can see the inscriptions if somebody needs it. This one we couldn't salvage the old cloth, but we made it with new, and they were happy. And when they finished, they asked us once again. Here's another example of using a piece from the old, and keeping the mounting, and at least I know which one is number 1 and which is number 4. We did a set of these, and they were happy. And he gave me a, I mean, not just a katak, but a hat, which I gave to Lobsang, and a gown. So, and then they asked me to come back. They asked us to come back, and so in mid-September we're going to do another one at Bardhan. Lama Stamba just got cataract surgery, so we were when we left at Bardhan, there was a sister monastery, High Lama, who was there at Sani, And he asked us to come to Sani too. But I don't want to push Lama Stamba with his eyes right now. So we're going, hopefully he'll be better next year, and we'll do, because Pukdal also asked us to come. So we'll do, next summer we'll do some at Dzongkul and at Sani, and then at Relagong. So that's my story. Thanks.